Hi, and welcome to Logik Talks with Logik.io, where our VP of Marketing Blake Grubbs and our expert guests discuss how Logik.io augments CPQ, enables guided selling, and supports elevated B2B e-commerce experiences. Today, we're talking with Brian McCray, the VP of Salesforce Practice at ForeFront, about streamlining the buying experience and simplifying purchasing with CPQ Technology. Enjoy!
All right, hi everyone. Welcome to another episode of Logik Talks. Today we are here with Brian McCray from ForeFront, one of our great partners. Brian, thanks for joining us. I think just to start out here, we'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about ForeFront, your background, firm's experience with CPQ and commerce, and we can start there.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me. Brian McCray, I'm a VP of Salesforce Practice here at ForeFront, focusing on the CPQ and commerce areas of the business. I've been here for almost 10 years. ForeFront is an SI here based in New Jersey. We've been working with Salesforce for, pretty much 17 plus years. We've been in the CPQ space since before they were acquired, and also the same thing in the commerce space. We work a lot with integration, a lot in manufacturing, HLS. It's one of our bigger areas. And we've been working with Cloud Craze. It's been implemented. So it's been great partnership and great work with you guys.
Absolutely, yeah. We've loved working with you guys as well too. I think one of the things that we've both seen in the last couple of years too is just how kind of the demands on CPQ technology in general has changed over the last years. Can you talk a little bit about, you guys work with a ton of different types of customers, as you mentioned, on CPQ projects. Can you talk a little bit about how the demands and requirements on CPQ has evolved and changed over the last few years?
Yeah, I think you got a couple things that are really pushing. One, customers are expecting a seamless experience. You're going to see that more and more. They want simplicity. They want, we use the term single pane of glass. They want that ability to see everything in one place. They want their pricing. They want their invoices. They want all the things that someone would expect, the Amazoning of the world. But then also you have the other part of the scenario where you have a lot of changes when it comes since COVID, where you have a lot of material pricing changes and things like that you have to have a structure that handles the ability for your costs to be updated pretty quickly. And most customers have varying cost price lists and such. So putting that all together has been very difficult. And I say difficult, it's been complex. And the goal, the worst thing you can say when you're speaking to commerce is complex. You don't want your customers to handle it. It's the complexity.
Yeah, absolutely. And that kind of leads into my next question. You alluded to it with kind of the, Amazon nature of that everyone expects out of their buying experience today, even in B2B. And, you guys sit in an interesting place where you're focused on both CPQ and commerce. How are you seeing kind of digital transformation initiatives being prioritized differently, this year in particular when it comes to self-service and really getting that single pane of glass, like you mentioned? How are companies thinking about self-service? How are they thinking about commerce? Curious what you guys are saying.
Yeah, I think it's all over the place. But I think everyone notices that everyone knows they need it, right? Everyone and the expectations of your customer are different, right? I think we spend a lot of time focusing on who your customer is. Not everybody has the expectations of Amazon. We talk about that as kind of that bar, but different folks with different degrees of knowledge and how they interact with your site and how they interact with you is key, right? If you're dealing with a parts vendor or a mechanic, you're going to have a different experience, and you want to make sure that experience is set up for them versus the head of accounting or a purchasing agent or any of those folks in between that might be going. The knowledge and the expectations of each person is key, especially in that you want to make sure you make that portal or that experience perfect for each one and limit the number of transactions, because if you do it right, you're limiting the number of phone calls and emails. Really, at the end of the day, you want that self-service. No different than years ago, the customer self-service was big on the service side. You want to limit your cases, your knowledge, and things like that. That's coming more and more towards the front side of the selling experience. You want your salespeople to be focused on the larger transactions and things like that. These smaller transactions and/or things that can be held in the self-service world allows them to get more efficient on the stuff of their day-to-day versus multiple quotes constantly coming in that can be easily handled from the system.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think my next question is just around, how are companies bridging that gap, I guess, for companies especially who have traditionally sold more through strictly, direct sales channels, things like that, who are now, delving in further and further to self-service and commerce. I guess from a tactical perspective, like, how are companies bridging kind of the technology gap that needs to happen there between, for example, CPQ and commerce, or direct sales technologies and commerce tools in general?
I think you get varying different scenarios, right? You get a lot of things where it's a request for quote, right? Give me that first step of like, okay, I'm just going to have someone give me, detailed information about what they want, all the way down to the specs and whatnot, shipping instructions, all those different pieces. They'll send Excel sheets and they'll call in, those type of scenarios. Sometimes you'll expose a CPQ portal back out to them, which is, can be pretty cumbersome. And you have to be trained on and understanding those different scenarios. So different folks have different scenarios of what's going on and how they do it. But usually what you're dealing with, okay, I've built a highly customized system, which is very specific to what I do, which it has a high cost and high maintenance, right? You lose the person that's in charge of that, then you're really kind of, you're hamstrung in that sense. And it doesn't always seamlessly work back with all your systems. It's kind of a system unto itself. There's other portals that you build specifically for the configuration piece, and you have to integrate that all back. So now you have kind of a non-seamless experience for your customer. So you have different ways that you handle it. And especially if you get the more complex it is, the more difficult translating that back to the customer in a seamless way is what we've seen. A lot of times we work with a lot of folks that deal with Excel, and the Excel is just more difficult than any real system can handle. That's where Logik has kind of come in, and the ability for that to kind of handle those complex transactions seamlessly.
Yeah, absolutely. And that transitions nicely into where I was going next, which is, you guys have been in the Salesforce space for a long time, like you mentioned, working with CPQ and commerce. And now, we've been working together, ForeFront and Logik for the last bit here. Tell me a little bit about kind of what you've been seeing in terms of the value that Logik has been able to bring customers, and kind of what just your personal perspective is on how Logik can help with some of these strategies that we're talking about here when it comes to omni-channel selling, things like that.
I think things that you didn't really think about from a streamlining perspective are opened up. I'll give you two different examples. A customer where you're building customized parts, right? Like you're building part of a machine, or different little things that have to be very specified to your individual build. So you send in your documents, you send in all the different pieces, you understand your material cost. So what they're basically doing is using Logik and CPQ to build that piece, and then you can expose that afterwards for the purchasing pattern, right? The ability for them to understand that SKU that they've created, which is a custom SKU, but now you can extend that through a commerce perspective. That's really kind of a more traditional route of CPQ to commerce, but it actually is, you can extend that through. You can eventually take the rules that now your salespeople are using to kind of quote it out, and you can eventually expose that to a customer where they're kind of creating that part for you within the rules that have been created. That actually, and then you're just validating. The other is really kind of you have a traditional. In this case, we work with a car company that handles different configurations. The ability for them to take the model of that car and understand what can be done to it and configure it and giving it right to the customer right there. It's been huge, right? It's seamless. The customer doesn't know they're switching between commerce and CPQ. And traditionally, what it allows you to do is take the rules of your checkout, right? A lot of commerce checkout rules are in there. A lot of your order processing rules, your shipping rules, your line level of shipping, all your shipping costs. Shipping costs in an Amazon world. Okay, I'm moving, batteries or something like that. It's small. Well, if I'm moving a turbine, my shipping rules are very different, and what I have to deal with, or if I'm dealing with ion batteries or any of those different things that I have to kind of handle, those are very specific, and you can keep that in your commerce side. But then you can also keep that power of having CPQ to kind of handle the configuration. By tying them together, you get the power of both sides.
Yeah, Yeah, absolutely. And then one thing you alluded to earlier, just in terms of streamlining as well, is, and we see this obviously with our customers, but curious, your perspective on just the administration of something like Logik, right? You mentioned rules management and things like that a little bit. How do you see just the general admin experience benefiting companies when it comes to, saving costs, saving resources, things like that?
I'll give you an example. Actually, one of the customers we're working with, and this was a great example. I mentioned it before when we're talking about material costs and production costs, right? The cost of, listen, we all go to Home Depot and see the cost of a 2x4, right? It's gone skyrocketed. It changes weekly. During COVID, it would be like it went from $3 to $7 in a day. But those things are there, right? So if you're quoting in a Excel sheet that has to be manually updated and pulled down, what ends up happening is folks are losing money because they're quoting off the wrong material prices. When customers are working with that material price can be centralized in one place, and even better, it can be mastered in your ERP, which is normally what's happening, and integrated down and tied right into Logik. Those savings alone, never mind the speed, never mind the efficiency, never mind all those other pieces. Those pieces where you have one single set of rule or one single set of data, and then you can build the rules off of that. It's built in one place and it separates out everywhere. A lot of these folks we talk to are dealing with Excel sheets, or they don't understand the difference, that they're not updating properly. So I think that in and of itself gives you a massive gets you ahead of the game on a lot of problems that we've run into in the last few years.
Yeah, it makes sense. Well, Brian, this has been great. I have just one more question for you. Just a chance for you to talk a little bit more about how ForeFront works with Logik, how ForeFront has been working both with Logik and Salesforce over the last period of time here to help drive success. What kind of customers you guys are focused on? What types of solutions you have to kind of uniquely help those folks?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, ForeFront, we do specialize heavily in manufacturing HLS, obviously other spaces as well. We were working with Logik and CPQ kind of since inception, really kind of talking with different customers, understanding how they can implement Logik, coupled with commerce or not coupled with commerce, depending on the situation. We've had some really good experiences so far. A couple customers working on this right now. Overall, very excited about the transformation of what Logik has done to Salesforce CPQ and what the possibilities are out there. We've actually got a couple accelerators out there on the process manufacturing side as well as the commerce side. Obviously, if anybody has any questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Excellent. Well, thank you again, Brian. This has been great. Appreciate you sharing your insights here. And go chat with Brian if you want some help with CPQ, commerce, or Logik.
Wonderful. Thanks, Blake. Thanks, everybody.